and welcome to another episode of the Hotspur Huddle, where we're back on a Wednesday to preview games coming up and much, much more. And with me tonight, as I said it all, I am joined by two fabulous guests. Now, first of all, I'm going to come to Nelson. Nelson, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Good to be back. I know I was here on one of the previous episodes with Wes, and it's good to be back just talking about football. Yeah, so thank you for having me.
No, thank you. And of course, Wezo is in the house. Wes, how are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Good to have the big dogs in the house tonight. We've gone big in the transfer market. Got Nelson back. You're here as well, Holly. The dream team is here. This is like M&F, Monday Night Football Plus, but it's just on a Wednesday. So we'll have to call it Wednesday Night Football instead. But I'm looking forward to this one. 100% should be a cracking show, and we've got lots to go through as well.
We do indeed. Like we always say every week on a Wednesday, the tactic boards will be out. I'll be sat here asking the questions because I ain't got a clue how tactics work, but it doesn't matter. But without further ado, obviously tonight's show is obviously sponsored by Kofa. So Wes, I'm going to let you fire away and do your thing. Tell everybody about Kofa.
Yeah, so Kickoff Football Academy Milton Keynes is my football coaching business, and we help lots of young boys and girls developing their footballing skills and their footballing abilities in lots of different ways. We have lots of different sessions, such as our academy, one-on-one sessions, after-school football sessions, and we are also running a holiday camp in the Easter holidays. So if you have a child who is in and around the Milton Keynes area, then please get in contact with us, and we would love to help your child improve on their game.
Love it, love it. But no, make sure that you go check out Kofa, and if you can, go and sign up to the holiday camps. But we're going to dive straight into obviously the game coming up, which is Villa. Now, Wes, I'm going to come to you first for this one. How do you kind of see this one going down, would you say?
Yeah, first of all, good evening. With regards to the mighty Villa, going to be again another really interesting sort of tactical battle. We all know the job that that Unai Emery has done at Villa Park, and probably up there with probably like the most impressive within a short space of time, given what circumstances he sort of took over in. But it's been really, really interesting actually to see the development of this Aston Villa team in the time under Unai Emery. I think when he came in, you had the likes of Matty Cash at right back. Delivery's not always on the money though from Matty Cash, have to say. And Luca Digne predominantly playing left back, although he has in recent weeks swapped with Alex Moreno. And then you know Cons has been at the back, Pau Torres, Clement Longley, who is a bit familiar to Spurs fans, looks like a completely different centre-half under Unai Emery. But I know Emery has also deployed Konza as a right-back, sometimes had Pau Torres and Longley at centre-back as well. Also had Diego Carlos in there. But I think it's towards the top end of the pitch where it then starts to get interesting. Obviously, Douglas Luiz in the more sort of sixth position. He's chose Tielemans more often than not, especially in recent weeks, although at the start of the season he wasn't really getting a look in. Then it's been pretty much Ollie Watkins as the number 9. John McGinn tends to sort of be playing inside, almost like an inside inverted winger, but really looking to come in to the pitch and try and influence play there. He's then had the likes of Jacob Ramsey playing a little bit narrow. And then it's been alongside Watkins, he's chopped and changed between Moussa Diaby and Leon Bailey. Quite interesting actually, because Moussa Diaby kept Leon Bailey out of the Bayer Leverkusen team, and then Unai Emery signed him for Villa, and there was a spell where Moussa Diaby was keeping Leon Bailey out of the Villa team as well. So it's going to be really interesting. Emery likes the 4-2-2-2 or 4-4-2 box formation, as it would probably be a bit easier to explain. It's something that served him really, really well at Villarreal. I know, obviously, Nelson, you'll probably know a little bit better than me. He went for more of a 4-2-3-1 kind of system at Arsenal, but then saying that, it was more like a Aubameyang from the left-hand side and then coming into the pitch. But yeah, I think that's probably how Villa are likely to set up on Sunday.
I mean, it's actually a good point to bring Nelson in. With Villa and Unai Emery, do you see comparisons between him and his Arsenal side, or is he doing it a completely different way with Villa this time?
I think he's actually doing it a different way. I mean, there are similarities, like Wes pointed out, but I think he's inherited this team, has actually made it his own compared to the previous side that he had with Arsenal, and as well as Villa. I would compare it more to his Villarreal stint more than his Arsenal stint. I think he's taken players, especially when you enter a club like Arsenal, you're obviously going to deal with big egos as well. So I think he's the type of manager that can deal with none of those type of players. I think he walks into a side like Villarreal and is able to deal with people that actually want to work for him and actually want to play for him. And I think he's been able to succeed with that at Villa. And I think if you had told me at the start of the season that Villa facing you guys heading into the weekend would be a fight for top four, I'd be laughing. But he's done a remarkable job. So you have to give him credit as well. So I think in terms of his previous kind of managerial stints at other clubs, I would say that this is completely different to the Arsenal side when he came in the Premier League the first time.
No, it is really interesting. Like you said, the battle for top four. I mean, Wes, do you think this for us is kind of pinnacle? If we win this one, then we can actually start thinking we could push on and get top four, or do you think it's not as plain sailing as that?
I think from a Spurs perspective, it's a game that we can't lose. So even if we come out at Villa Park with a point, I think most Spurs fans will take that. I think you look at Villa's home form this year, barring the odd couple of results here and there, they've pretty much been like spot on in every game. And the way that they've gone at teams, especially at home as well, get that whole end, really buzzing and behind the team, almost being that 12th player. And they've really, like I say, they've really used their home form to their advantage this year, have Villa. But yeah, I think from a Spurs perspective, it's a game that we can't lose. It's a must not lose as opposed to a must win for me. I think there's probably still a lot of football to be played. I know Spurs have a really tough run in where we've got the likes of City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Newcastle, all like back to back. But yeah, I think there's going to be some more twists and turns. But I think as long as Spurs can come out at Villa Park with a positive result, I think that will do us quite nicely.
Hopefully, it'd be nice to be talking about on Monday that we've got 3 points. That would be great. But before we move on, Nelson, I just want to come to you for one more point regarding Villa, and that obviously is Ollie Watkins. The man is firing on all cylinders. Now, for you, do you think Spurs can kind of contain him with the likes of Romero and Mickey van der Ven at the back?
It's a good question, Holly, because I was thinking about, obviously, leading up to the game, the key matchups that might determine the game, and I was looking at potentially Basuma, Douglas Luiz in the middle. Potentially, I know Brennan Johnson had a really good game on the weekend, and I was thinking about him against Alex Moreno, who's obviously stepped in recently, so that could be a potential battle there, because I know Brennan is building a lot of momentum as well in the Spurs side. But I think, the key one would probably have to be the two centre-backs against Ollie Watkins. I mean, as an England, just, from a neutral perspective, as an England fan as well, it's been wonderful to see Ollie Watkins kind of flourish under Unai Emery. I think one of the only players in double figures in both goals and assists this season. So I think Unai Emery has done a remarkable job in terms of getting the best out of certain players, and Ollie's been one of them. I think it's going to be a really tough test. I think I would back the centre half to actually deal with Watkins. I think it's not going to be an easy job when you've got the likes of Leon Bailey and John McGinn them supporting him. But I think if they're able to obviously keep tight on him, because I think it's just giving him that yard of space. I think as a striker, I think he's learnt to do really much better in terms of like dealing with, small kind of spaces around him and being able to get a shot off quickly. And also, I think he's become one of the things that I don't think people have rated him enough is his intelligence of the game. I think he's become much better at reading the game better as a striker compared to when he first actually started for Villa when he came from Brentford. So I think as well, that's one of the things to kind of look out for him, as well as just his tenacity. Like he's always at you. He's never going to stop. So I think for 90 minutes, I think the Spurs centre-half have got definitely a tough job, but I wouldn't put it past them to actually keep him at bay. So fingers crossed. But I think he is the danger man. And if they can snuff him out, I think that would actually do well for Big Ange and obviously the rest of the team to actually get a result at Villa Park.
Fingers crossed, because like I say, Mickey van der Ven, Daddy Longlegs, has been incredible. And I think if he's the one that can obviously keep Ollie Watkins under wraps with the likes of Romero, I think we might be all right. But it's not going to be easy going to obviously Villa. But fingers crossed we get the job done. Now, Nelson, I'm going to hand over to you now because you're probably the best person to ask these questions. Predominantly to Wes. I'll give them a go. But I'll let you fire away with the next section of the show.
No worries. I mean, at this section of the show, we're going to talk about obviously what happened just over the weekend. We know that there was a lot of refereeing. There was a lot of controversy surrounding refereeing, not just in our league. Obviously, you might have heard as well in La Liga as well, with Jude Bellingham scoring a late goal that was cancelled out literally at the death by the refs. But obviously, we go back to Forest versus Liverpool and Núñez scoring a 99th minute winner. And I know if that decision was overturned and something else was, dealt with better, then you're looking at the title race looking completely different heading into Liverpool City on the weekend. But I guess, Wes, I know you've seen it. I know you've seen the call that Paul Tierney made. And I'd actually like to point out that PGMOL have actually come out to say that Paul Tierney is now going to be part of the VAR team. So as part of, Arsenal Brentford on the weekend, they said it's not been like a punishment for what he's done, but they've just kind of come out and said that he's going to be a part of the VAR team. So my question is, like, in a time where we have something like VAR that's meant to help us, or meant to help, the referees be able to actually, do better, help with their jobs. Why is it we still seeing? You could argue this season we've seen a lot of silly calls and decisions at a time where you have something like a VAR that's meant to support refs and actually help the game become better, and for fans to watch and also for players and coaches.
I think the problem is any contentious decision that happens on the pitch, us as fans, we're expecting VAR to step in. Mm-hmm. And VAR isn't there to re-referee the game. It's there to support the referees on the decisions that they make or don't make. I think in the Liverpool case, Paul Tierney should have been helped out more on the pitch on the day by his assistants. Because for those that haven't seen it, it was, I think it was a corner. Liverpool player's gone down in the box. Hudson-Odoi's got the ball at his feet. Referee's blown. Now, what is actually quite clever here is the role that Luis Diaz plays. Because just as Paul Tierney turns his back, Luis Diaz nicks the ball off of Hudson-Odoi and kicks it back towards Kelleher. So if you're Paul Tierney at this point, are you going, well, the ball's ended up. He might have thought that Hudson-Odoi has tried to pass it or cross it, and it's just gone straight back to the goalkeeper. So I think at this point, a assistant referee, which is what they're called now, as opposed to linesmen or lineswomen, should be communicating with Paul Tierney to say, or the fourth official even, because they have a lot of influence, which is why you would see managers on the sides having a go at the fourth official because they can influence what goes on the pitch as well. But I think, like I say, it's one of those where he should have had more assistance on the pitch on the day. I don't think VAR could have really done anything in that situation. But it's just that having that assistance from those on the pitch on the day, just to go, oh, by the way, just a reminder, it was a Nottingham Forest ball, so it's a drop ball by the edge of the box. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot that happens in between that decision being given, if you like, and Liverpool scoring. So you could argue Forest actually need to do better. They need to defend it better. I think there's two incidences where Forest have the ball and don't deal with it really well. And I think even Gary Neville mentioned there was like 2 minutes between the goal. And 2 minutes in football, anybody that's played the game knows 2 minutes in football is a very long time in football. So Forest, I get where they're coming from to a certain degree, but I don't have too much empathy because they could have dealt with the situation themselves a lot better. Because if the incident doesn't result in a goal, nobody talks about it. It's only the fact that it's resulted in a goal is why we're having this discussion now. So, yeah, I think, like I say, from Paul Tierney's point of view, needed a bit more help on the day. But from a Forest perspective, yeah, I can see why they're aggrieved a little bit. But actually, deal with what's happened, and from a defensive point of view, clear your lines. So yeah, that would be that for me.
I say there's just this from Ronnie Nelson.
Good
I
old
didn't know
Ronnie.
whether you wanted to have a discussion about what Ronnie's put.
Well, I don't know. I think personally, based on that's a good question, Ronnie. I think on that, I think, like I said, PGMO have come out and said it's not a punishment. But I think if we're really looking at, the error, like you said, I agree with you, Wes. 2 minutes is actually a lot in football. So Forest as well, I don't have much sympathy for what they could have done in that time to deal with the situation. But I do think PGMOL have decided to be kind of safe and avoid potentially anything repeating on the weekend. Because, again, I was going to point out the fact that, in one of your games this season at your stadium against Liverpool, again, it seems like Liverpool's the common theme here, but
makes a change.
there was obviously the incident that happened with the offside as well. So it seems like it's been a repeated thing happening this season. And I also wanted to come to you, Holly, in regards to, the credibility of the league. What does that do you think, in your opinion, for the credibility of the league? We're talking about the league, like, anybody in the world could say that the Premier League is arguably the best league in the world. But why is it that, despite all the great football, the great players that we have, coaches, fans as well, why is it now we're having to have, what does that do for the credibility if we're having decisions like this, affect, the league?
I think I'm going to bring out my conspiracy book now, but I've always said we've seen in the World Cup that these sort of things can be fixed and can be done, i.e. The likes of offside. We know that if you use that kind of technology that they used in the World Cup, it's done, it's dusted, it's done in a couple of seconds. So why isn't it done in the Premier League? I always think it's done to keep the conversation going. I think that's purely what it's about. And it's so frustrating because, like you said, Nelson, there's been so many occasions this season where so many things have gone wrong that could have been fixed, but they weren't because of the uncertainties. And you're sat here thinking, I'm still talking about it. And I think for me, that's why this kind of controversy with VAR keeps happening, purely because it just keeps the conversation going. Now, call me crazy because it might just be a conspiracy theory, but when you look at it from an outside perspective, you can kind of see why that's a thing, because the media keep getting clicks on their tabloids, etc., etc. So, yeah, call me crazy, but I generally think that's what it is. And in terms of credibility, I think it just makes me feel sad because I'm losing that kind of aspect of enjoying football, because all of a sudden I don't know whether it's going to go to VAR and the goal's going to get ruled out. I think for me it takes away the fun of the sport, but that's how I kind of see it.
No, I mean, that's a good way of seeing it. I didn't even think about the whole conspiracy theory. Like, that actually is a very good point. I guess this final question to both of you is, all clubs, I think, have been affected from some of these decisions that have happened this season. What do you think the clubs need to do? Like, because I know there's been things said out there about the clubs actually coming together, to actually challenge, PGMOL in terms of like how to deal with, refereeing decisions. But what do you think should be done? I mean, I know some clubs have appealed individually, to have decisions overturned. But what do you think as a whole sort of league clubs should do? What, in your opinions? Start with you, Wes.
Here's the thing, right, with me with VAR. It's subjective because you have a referee on VAR duty. Now, that referee's, if it comes to like a foul, well, if I'm a referee and I deem one thing to be a foul, then, the next week, Nelson, you're on a game and it's a similar incident, but you don't deem it a foul. Do you know what I mean? So there's still that subjectiveness within it, especially when they're disallowing goals, etc. for things like that. I think the offside one, Holly mentioned there about the semi sort of automated system in the World Cup. It worked because it's semi-automated, basically, and it's just somebody then going, oh, yeah, no, that's offside, actually. It's a lot easier, and that's why I think something like goal line technology has never really been spoken about, apart from the Sheffield United Villa game where it stopped working. Like, okay, it's technology, it could potentially go down at any point, but other than that, whether it's a goal or not because it's technology that's determining that. I think in terms of what clubs can do, I don't think they can do a lot. I actually think if you asked clubs and players whether they would want VAR in the game or not, they would probably say no, because from an entertainment point of view, like centre forwards, we talked about Ollie Watkins earlier. If he bags a goal and it's slightly contested, he's going to be like, is it a goal? Is it not? And was I offside? Was I not? Because they're going to check it, and stuff like that. And actually, I think it does take out the sting and the momentum and feel and atmosphere of a game. Like, you look at our game against Chelsea earlier on in the season, there was a VAR check every 3 minutes or something bizarre, wasn't it, really? I mean, Holly, you were at that game, and you know what I mean? It's like that game could have lasted about 3 hours, to be honest. So, yeah, I think from a club's point of view, they will probably look at it and go, no, we don't want it. We don't want it. But then we had it, football without it, there was getting too many things that weren't quite working, and there was a lot at stake, and that's why they brought it in. I think it's just about how we help and how we support the referee. So I'm very much pro VAR, but it has to be used in the right way. It has to be supported correctly by those who are running it, and delivering it. And I think actually, if that is the case, you will see a much more effective system in place that, as a fan going to games, you're not going to get annoyed because it's taking too long, or, you're not going to get, as a player, you're not going to get disorientated with the game itself that you're playing in, because you've got VAR checks that are going on here, there, and everywhere. So I just think it's about how if it's going to be strictly referees, either make them specialists in VAR, or, just make them better and train them better on how to use the systems. If we're going to move away from that, there's talk of having football people or ex-players in there at Stockley Park or whatever, looking at it. Don't know if that will really work, because, again, all down to interpretation. Again, somebody like, I don't know, Roy Keane's interpretation of a foul is going to be completely different to, someone like Theo Walcott, for example. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I just think, like I say, I'm pro VAR, but we just need to learn how to use it better, because there's not this much scrutiny on VAR on the continent and in other countries.
What about yourself, Holly? You want to add anything on to what Wes has said?
I think Wes has kind of hit the nail on the head. I think it's just that element of retraining, or making people specialists in VAR and then leaving refs to do the ref's job, because at the moment we can see it's not really working with this mixture of doing both, and I think that's kind of where the lines get a bit blurred. And I agree with Wes in a sense, it is subjective to a point in terms of fouls, etc. I don't know, I just think we need to iron it out a little bit, because again, it's always going to be subjective because it's an opinion, but it's where those rules and those kind of training comes into it, which means they'll make better decisions on things, which then you hope those decisions will kind of be the same, if not similar, rather than having massive different differentiations, if that makes sense, of different fouls.
Yeah, I agree with you both. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll probably look back at this season in particular and probably laugh at it, because like Wes said, it will hopefully, once the support is there, we'll be able to have like an effective sort of smooth game. But yeah, I'll hand it back to you, Holly, because I know as well we've got to talk about, something that's very kind of depending whether you not guys see it's controversial. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Nelson. Like I say, it was good hosting skills from you. I could never be able to ask those types of questions. So thank you very much. But yes, we're going to bring up this, because I know in the Tottenham community, this coming out today, I don't want to say it's rattled a few people, it's angered a few people, and I think it's warranted. So, Wes, I'm going to come to you first. What was your kind of overall take when we saw the news today from Tottenham?
Well, I saw that there was a club statement, and I think, like most Spurs fans, were going, right, what's all this about? And then reading it, it was about an increase in season ticket prices, which I think fans were sort of expecting, given that they'd been frozen for the last couple of years or so. And I think it was like the year before, I think it was the membership prices that went up at the club as opposed to the season tickets. So then I think most people going, Levy being Levy, he's done the memberships 1 year, and then the next year, like, right, we know now it's going to be season ticket prices. So I think people were expecting that. What I don't think people were expecting was just how much they were going to increase. Like 6% is a lot. And I think the club, bearing in mind Spurs are in the top 10 richest clubs in the world, and then the club using the whole sort of cost of living as an excuse and saying we're not immune to that. Okay, we get that, but you're the 8th richest club in the world. Like, come on. We pay as, just as a match going fan, it is now ridiculously expensive to go and watch Spurs. I think the tickets are probably up there with some of the highest in the league as it is. And I think a lot of fans are sort of going, what are we paying for? In the sense of, I know we lost Harry Kane, and that was probably a massive sellable asset from the club to fans. But it feels like now the feel-good factor's back at the club. Everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet. We love Ange. We love what he's done. There you go. Bang, have that one. So I think that's where fans go, Rick, can we not just have 5 minutes of peace and just enjoy, watching our team? And, you look at pricing, even for last Saturday's game, Holly, 69 quid to watch Palace. Like, to watch Palace. I mean, yeah, it was great watching Palace. Obviously, I did my piece on Glasner and everything last week, and a lot of that actually came to fruition, which I'm buzzing about. But again, it's like, 69 quid to watch Crystal Palace. Like, they're in the bottom half of the table. I think obviously clubs categorize their games, completely understand that. But when you have a lot of Category B games and not many Category C games, it's a bit like, hold on a minute. But I know football has got expensive anyway. Like, growing up, me and my dad used to go once a month. It then turned into once every couple of months, and before you know it, it's like a 250 quid day out, and it is a day out. So yeah, I think from that point of view, yeah, the club perhaps, I wouldn't say could do more or could do better, but it's frustrating from a fan's point of view to know that, if we are to renew season tickets, that they're going up 6%, which for a lot of people now could make or break whether they actually renew. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a waiting list as long as your arm and as long as Nelson's body. I mean, Nelson's massive, that's why I used him. But do you know what I mean? That's not the point. But I think, obviously long gone are the days where we're classed as fans, we're customers, we're consumers now. And that is the way that they get, because football is a business. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when you'd like to think that the club would look to support its fans in a way which wouldn't potentially price them out. And I think this price hike could potentially do that.
I think that's the thing. I think, like Kerry said, in terms of why am I paying 100 quid for a view from the Cockle when I could do the Spurs for less? And exactly. As funny as it is from Kerry, it is true in a sense. I mean, you've got other people saying that they're paying nearly $2,000 for things. It's just bizarre. And Nelson, obviously, from a fan that isn't Spurs, is it the same that you're finding at your club, or is it out of the blue that Spurs have done this hike? Are other clubs doing the same thing that you know of?
I'm not sure about other clubs in the league that are doing this, but I'm not surprised that Spurs have announced these, these 6% rise. Because I mean, you got to factor in obviously the fact that they're in London, the capital. I think it's all about money when you're in London, but it is unfortunate because I'm still complaining about going from one stop to the other on the TFL line, and their price, increase as well. Like it's just the London thing. I think that's something, unfortunately, like Wes said, it will price people out, of potentially, renewing their season ticket, which is unfortunate because you're talking about potential die-hard fans, that have, committed their lives to supporting Spurs. And now by raising this by 6%, I just think yeah. And as I can see Kerry as well, I'm riled up about TFL. I mean, they charge you at 3 a.m. at night. You're waking up in the morning and you're finding these ridiculous statements. Anyways, besides the point, I just think it's a shame. I know my club have done the same thing in recent years about, basically putting up the prices as well. That's a result as well of living in London. And yeah, I think just in the next few years, I think we're going to see the same thing with other clubs. Even clubs that are outside of the city, they're going to find, themselves also increasing ticket prices. And that's as a result of being in the Premier League as well. Like, we keep forgetting that, being in the Premier League, it's a business, like Wes said. So it's expensive at the end of the day to be in the Premier League. And it's just going to continue. I don't see it stopping, which is unfortunate because when you look at the history of football, like, Jose Mourinho said, football heritage, it's just sort of, you're losing that. You're losing that with these kind of things that are more focused on business and, kind of trying to, look at fans as the customer rather than fans. So, yeah, that's my opinion on it.
And I think that's a sad thing, like you said, in terms of the diehard fans that have been going since they're young. They're getting on a bit now, and it's almost like, wow, I can now not afford to go anymore. And I think that's the real sad thing about it. Obviously, I don't know whether Spurs will retract it and put it down a little bit, as we know with Spurs. They tend to not retract things. But hopefully something does happen, because I think, like we all kind of said tonight, it's a sad thought to think that the football diehard fans are kind of dying out now because of these price hikes. But hey ho, here's the hoping in terms of they do get lowered. But you know what? It's been incredible tonight to have you two with me to dissect everything, and obviously Nelson taking over part of the show, which was great as well. So we'll go around the table, we'll say our goodbyes. Before we go though, we have to remember that tonight's show is obviously sponsored by Kofa, and bear with me while I find the right bloody tab. Bear with. Here we go. So for one last time, Wes, far away with what Kofa is.
Yeah, Kickoff Football Academy, Milton Keynes. It's my football coaching business in the Delhi Alley country, because not many people know where it is. So that's why I just referenced Delhi, because most people know who he is. And we help young boys and girls with their football skills. And we just try and help them develop as much as we can through different sessions, whether that be our skill centre, our academy, after school football, or football camps as well. So please get in contact with us if you are from Milton Keynes or surrounding areas, because we would love to help your child improve on their game.
Love it. Thank you, Wes. And we'll go to Nelson now. So Nelson, thank you again for joining us tonight. Where can everybody find you doing your thing?
I'm not really much of a social man, but if you do want to find me on socials, you can find me on Instagram at ntumba25. That's NTUMBA ntumba25.
Love it. Thank you so much, Nelson. And the best part of the show is about to come with Wes's outro. So, Wes, thank you again for joining me on this Fired Wednesday. Where can everybody find you?
Here we go. Strap yourselves in. Twitter is at Wezo10, the unofficial Moussa Dembele fan account. Usually tweeting all good things about the greatest Belgian to ever grace the Premier League. No, not Kevin De Bruyne, not Vincent Kompany. Moussa Dembele. So that is me on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram at Wezo32, usually at a Spurs game. As you know, Holly, because we met up on Saturday after the game against Palace. So I'm usually at a Spurs game, tend to go quite often with my dad, Mr. Paintbrush. Shout out Mr. Paintbrush as well. And then obviously, as I mentioned there, Kickoff Football Academy or at Kofa MK for all the football coaching. And Holly, thanks to you pestering me, I've started doing some little videos just on topical football content. So that is WM32 Football on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube as well. Bang! That's a wrap.
That was well good, man. I like that you added in with like Kevin De Bruyne and that. So nah, you ain't got nothing on Moussa. So I enjoyed that. But no, thank you, Wes, and thank you also to Nelson. It kind of leads me to say that obviously, hopefully we get 3 points against Villa. Holly Hotspurs Live will be back next Monday, and then the Hotspur Huddle will be back next Wednesday as well. Thank you to everybody that's tuning in, rewatching, all of the good stuff. And until next time, come on, you Spurs.